Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, on the island of Corsica, which was a French territory at that time. His family was noble, but they were not rich. Napoleon's father was a lawyer, and his mother was a housewife. They had a large family, and Napoleon was the second of 8 children. Even though his family was not wealthy, they believed that education was very important. When Napoleon was 9 years old, his parents sent him to mainland France to study. Napoleon arrived in France and went to a school for young boys. He was often lonely because he did not speak French very well at first, and he was from Corsica, a place that many of the other boys made fun of. But Napoleon was very determined to succeed. He worked hard to learn the language and to do well in his studies. He showed an early interest in military tactics and history, and these subjects became his favorites. As he grew older, he began to dream of becoming a great soldier and leader. When Napoleon turned 16, he finished his schooling and joined the French army. He started as a second lieutenant, which was a low rank. At first, Napoleon did not have many important duties, but he was very ambitious. He wanted to learn everything about war and fighting. He spent many hours reading books about battles, studying maps, and learning how to lead soldiers. Slowly, he gained experience and became known as a smart and brave officer. In 1793, during the French Revolution, Napoleon's big chance came. The French Revolution had caused a lot of chaos in France. The king had been overthrown, and the country was in the middle of a civil war. There were many enemies outside of France who wanted to invade, and there were groups inside the country who wanted to take control. Napoleon was sent to fight against the British and Spanish who were trying to take control of the city of Toulon in southern France. Napoleon used clever strategies and won a very important victory. This success made him a hero in France. As Napoleon continued to win battles, his reputation grew. In 1796, he was given command of the French army in Italy. There, he fought against the Austrians and other European powers. Napoleon's army was smaller than the enemy's, but he used his knowledge of war and strategy to outsmart them. He won battle after battle, and the French soldiers began to admire him. Napoleon's victories in Italy made him even more famous in France. In 1799, Napoleon saw an opportunity to take control of the French government. At that time, the government in France was weak, and many people were unhappy with how the country was being run. Napoleon decided to act. He led a coup d'état, which is a sudden, illegal change in government. The government fell, and Napoleon took control. He became the first consul of France, which made him the leader of the country. At first, Napoleon did not call himself a king, but he was clearly in charge. Many people were excited about his leadership because they thought he would bring stability and success to France. As first consul, Napoleon made many changes to improve France. He created the Napoleonic Code, a set of laws that helped make the legal system fairer and clearer. The Napoleonic Code is still important today in many countries around the world. Napoleon also made changes to education, the economy, and the military. He believed that strong leadership and a strong country were the keys to success. He also worked to make peace with some of France's enemies, such as Britain, although he continued to fight with others. In 1804, Napoleon declared himself Emperor of France. He wanted to create a large empire, and he believed that he was the best person to lead France and Europe. In a famous ceremony in 1804, Napoleon crowned himself emperor in the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. He even placed the crown on his own head, which was a symbol of his power and independence. Napoleon believed that he was a great leader who could bring order to a world that was full of chaos. Napoleon's ambition did not stop in France. He wanted to expand his empire and make France the most powerful country in Europe. He fought many wars against other European countries, including Austria, Prussia, and Russia. Napoleon's army won many important battles, and he expanded his empire across most of Europe. He ruled over much of Italy, Spain, and Germany. Many countries were afraid of Napoleon's power, and they joined together to fight him. One of Napoleon's most famous victories came at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. He defeated a large army made up of Russian and Austrian soldiers. This victory made Napoleon even more powerful. However, not all of Napoleon's battles were successful. One of his biggest mistakes was his invasion of Russia in 1812. Napoleon believed that if he defeated Russia, he could control all of Europe. He gathered a huge army and marched into Russia. But the Russian army did not fight Napoleon directly. Instead, they used a strategy called scorched earth, where they burned their villages and crops so that Napoleon's army would have nothing to eat. The Russian winter also made life very difficult for Napoleon's soldiers. Many of them froze to death or starved. Napoleon was forced to retreat, and his army was badly weakened. This defeat marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. After his failure in Russia, many European countries began to unite against Napoleon. In 1814, the combined forces of Russia, Britain, Austria, and Prussia invaded France and forced Napoleon to give up his throne. He was exiled to the island of Elba, a small island off the coast of Italy. Napoleon was allowed to live there in relative peace, but he did not stay there for long. In 1815, Napoleon escaped from Elba and returned to France. He raised an army and began to march toward Paris. Many French people supported him because they believed he could restore France to its former glory. However, Europe's other countries were not willing to let Napoleon return to power. They quickly gathered their armies and fought against him in the Battle of Waterloo, which took place in Belgium. Napoleon's army was defeated, and he was captured. This time, he was sent to a much more remote island, St. Helena, in the South Atlantic Ocean. Napoleon spent the last years of his life there. Napoleon died on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51. The exact cause of his death is not clear, but many historians believe that he may have suffered from stomach cancer. Napoleon's life was full of triumphs and failures, but his impact on the world was undeniable. He changed the course of European history and influenced the way many countries were governed. He is remembered as one of the greatest military leaders in history, and his legacy still affects the world today. Despite his many mistakes and defeats, Napoleon remains a figure of fascination. People still study his strategies, his rise to power, and his fall from grace. Some admire him for his military genius and vision, while others criticize him for his wars and the pain they caused. No matter how one views him, Napoleon Bonaparte will always be a central figure in the history of Europe.